Hey, Jim, this is Jeff. I just want to make sure my audio does work.
You loud, clear.
Thank you, sir.
Test 1 2 3. Test 1 2 3.
Good. Sure, make sure.
Ta-da. So theoretically, Jim, if you could just say something, theoretically, I can hear you.
Testing.
Wahoo! I can
Okay.
hear you. Yay. All right. So now I'm back up on the 9th floor.
Okay.
Okay, I see that we have Commissioner Burrows has been able to join us. That is fantastic. There's one piece that I don't have yet. Let me go get it. So now I guess I'll ask the question of our staff. Let's see. I don't see Mr. Knapp. Oh, he's there. Never mind. I see him now. So we have him for the first meeting. And then another question for our staff is, are we all set in terms of UGTV and YouTube?
Correct.
We are. Woohoo. At this point, I just saw Commissioner Johnson. So all 5 committee members are here. Fantastic. So before I call the meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee to order, I'd like to announce that due to COVID-19, some committee members, staff, and members of the public are attending remotely via Zoom, as well as some being on site. During the meeting, we ask that all participants please mute your devices, whether phones or computers, when you're not speaking, so that we avoid background noise. During the meeting, please do your best to make sure you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak, so that the public who is observing remotely knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of participants who are remote and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. Due to COVID-19, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. However, the public is allowed to participate by Zoom or to submit comments by email prior to this meeting. Those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. With all of that said, we'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Neighborhood and Community Development Standing Committee. I would ask the clerk to go ahead and please call the roll.
Roll call. Walters,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Townsend,
Here.
Burrows,
Here.
McKiernan.
Here, and this is fascinating. So I still have a lag. So for those of you on the committee that don't know, I am at City Hall. I foolishly thought I could go to the 5th floor and just zoom in with all of you. But because I assume of our outbound going signal and our incoming signal, I'm hearing a lag between when I assume our clerk says something on the 5th floor and when I hear it in my ear. So if I'm discombobulated or seem like I'm either early or late, it's because I'm trying to listen to what's coming in through my ear. I apologize for that in advance. Our first item of, so first of all, there were no revisions after the agenda was originally published. So our first item of business is the approval of minutes from our standing committee meetings of both March 29th, 2021 and May 3rd, 2021. So I'd ask members of the committee, are there motions for those 2 sets of meeting minutes?
Walters, I move for approval of both sets of meeting minutes.
Townsend, second.
There's a motion and a second to approve those minutes as submitted. And rather than do a vote of assent, I'll just ask the clerk to quickly call the roll on that.
Roll call. Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you, committee. That takes us to our committee agenda. We only have one item on the agenda, but it's broken into 3 groups. 1A, that's land bank option applications for new construction, row homes, 8 units and 8 accessory dwelling units. So I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Judd Knapp to present item 1A.
Thank you, Commissioner. Get my screen up here. All right. So for today, I'm going to present to you 3 total applications, 1 row home and 2 commercial properties. So for the first one is row homes. They're requesting 7 land bank lots right to the west of Sumner High School. This new construction is for 8 unit row houses with accessory dwelling units. The total frontage for this is 250 feet. The housing details is 8 units, 5 bedrooms, and 2 baths each. The applicant's market research showed him that the 5 bedrooms would work in this area. And each one will have a studio accessory dwelling unit. Now, an accessory dwelling unit is a small apartment that's actually behind the, this would be actually on top of the 2-car garage that's in the back. So it's a little 500 square foot apartment behind each unit. They also plan on building a greenhouse on the roof so the landowners can grow their own vegetables. So they plan to start September of 2021 and they plan to complete it by April of 2020. They have an experienced architect that has designed multifamily projects before. They've already selected their general contractor. Their next steps is their planning plan review. So there will be another public meeting for this one. Staff and Land Bank Advisory Board did recommend the project, but during our staff meeting, it came up that the Sumner High School was previously interested in this land to expand their sporting facility, I believe. So we have been in contact with the school district, but we have not gotten a definite yes or no that they want. So the staff recommendation is that we hold this item over 1 month until I can get that yes or no answer. That would conclude this item, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. I will ask if the committee has any comments or questions, and I'll recognize Harold Johnson.
Thank you, Chair McKiernan. Thank you, Mr. Knapp. This project is very interesting. At its onset, it really sounds quite compelling. But when you talk about having, if you go back to the first screen, or the next screen rather, or the back screen, no, the next one, I'm sorry. You're talking about 5 bedrooms in each unit and only 2 bathrooms, and that each unit is only 1,600 square feet, but that's a lot of rooms for each unit, even at a 1,600 square foot. I'm not an expert in terms of how to break out the per square footage, but that's just seems like a lot of folks in a small amount of space. Would you have any comment on that or any thoughts on that?
Commissioner, I would not. I am not an expert in it either, but I know that we have our staff at building inspections that are. So this is just an option agreement to give them the opportunity for us to sell them the property if they can get building inspection approval. So I do, on the next slide, there is like the layout they provided me for what the house will look like.
Right.
That's probably the best answer I can give you there.
And then when you talk about 5 bedrooms per unit, you're talking about how many parking spaces per unit?
Commissioner, again, that would be a planning question. That did not come up during our staff meeting, but there is going to be a 2-car garage behind with alley access.
2-car garage. Okay, I misunderstood. A 2-car garage per unit. Then.
That is correct.
Gotcha. 2-car garage per unit. 5. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. I'm glad we're letting it go over for a month. I think that, I know for a fact that the Douglas Sumner Neighborhood Association has some real concerns about it as well, particularly as we consider, the number of people that could potentially occupy these dwellings. It could get quite high in terms of the number of tenants. So it's going to go back to do, what exactly are we sending it back to do?
Staff was waiting for an answer from the Sumner High School or District 500 to if they are interested in the lots or not.
And it hasn't gone through plan review yet?
It has not. This is the first step in the process.
Well, I support it going back. for other reasons. But I believe that the Sumner Neighborhood Association will be in contact with the developer. As a matter of fact, I plan on talking with them as well this week. So with that, I will make a motion to approve as been submitted to us. I know that I see that Commissioner Townsend has her hand up, but at least I have a motion there. Chair.
Okay, so let me clarify, Commissioner Johnson, your motion is to follow staff's recommendations to hold this item for 1 month until we consider it further.
That's correct.
All right. Thank you. Let's put a bookmark on that, and I'll recognize Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Townsend, District 1. Since I have the floor, I will second Commissioner Johnson's motion. And since I hope that it will go back, when it goes back, I'm just curious also, as I look at the floor plan, to find out from the developer, what type of family groups do they expect will inhabit these dwellings? 5 bedrooms, that is a lot. Where is the living area? Where's the kitchen area? It's just a bit unusual. So I would like to know something about what is their marketing scheme here? Since it's going back, let's ask those. I'd like the answers to those questions as well. Are they going for density here? Are they looking at one family or having, more than one family in each of these units? It's just rather odd when you look at the floor plan.
I will pass those on.
Commissioner Townsend, I would agree with. Go ahead, Mr. Knapp.
No, I'm just agreeing with Commissioner Townsend that I will find out that information for her.
Thank you.
Fantastic. A couple of other questions that I would have would be, I assume that the developer has lined up all of the financing that would be required. But one of the things that I would wonder is, would this qualify for, and would the developer plan to apply for something like the NRA? And could the viability of this project potentially hinge on something other than the land? And while I completely understand this is an option process and they have to get all their other ducks in a row before we finally convey the land and they finally build, I wonder if we want to tie up land in an option if all of the ABCs are not pretty well outlined. Plan review in terms of neighborhood meetings. So that's my own personal question. And I certainly support the motion to send it back for a public meeting and for meeting with the commissioners. So I'll recognize Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and please, committee Commissioner Burrows speaking. Power's out at my home, so I'm on my phone, so it's going to be very difficult for me to follow. But please be patient with me. If I'm looking at the schematics or the blueprints correctly, this looks like a 3-bathroom home with 5 bedrooms. The master being on the main floor, the main bath, and then you take the steps and you go up and there's 4 bedrooms, 2 bath. So Judge, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but that's how I'm viewing the prints.
Commissioner, that is correct. There's, in the picture that I'm showing, there's 3 bathrooms.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have, and the bedrooms are 11 by 11, 10 by 11. So while they're not overly large, they're not that small. I mean, they're conducive to that type of square footage. I would just state that I think the floor plans for the concepts that they're proposing are acceptable in reference to 5 bedroom, 3 bath, 2 floors with this, I would call it a community space that is on the lower level. That's 8 by 12, which is probably a deck or patio area. That's the only comment I'd want to make. That's how I viewed the floor plans. I was to understand these were only 5-bedroom, 2-bath, but I believe that has been corrected now. Thank you, Jed.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm just scanning over here to see if there are any other hands up. I don't see any at the moment. So we do have before us a motion and a second to, excuse me, I'm going to mute my microphone. We do have a motion and a second to hold this item for a period of 1 month for the developer to have a meeting with the public and for the commissioners, the local commissioners, to have meetings with the developer to better outline this project. And at this point, even though it is going back, I'd like to ask if there's anyone, first of all, from the clerk's office, did we receive any communication about this item prior to the meeting?
We did not receive.
Thank you so much. And then I'll ask among our attendees, is there anyone who would like to offer comment on this particular application in advance of it being sent back for further consideration? I don't see any hands going up, but
Commissioner,
now I do see one going up. Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
I was going to say thank you, Chair. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I do know that the president of the Douglas Sumner Neighborhood Association, Ms. Beverly Easterwood, is online. I don't know if that's the person that has their hand up, but I certainly would, if she so desire. Great. We're on the same page. Great. Thank you.
She did, as a matter of fact, just raise her hand. And so if the clerk could promote Easterwood from the attendees to be able to speak, I'll recognize Beverly Easterwood. Looks like we're still waiting to get her transferred over.
Hello. Hello.
Oh, there you go, Miss Easterwood.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Great to have you with us. If you'd go ahead and just for the record, give us your name and your city of residence, and then you've got 3 minutes to share with us your thoughts on this proposal.
Okay, my name is Beverly Easterwood. I live in Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm the president of the Douglas Sumner Neighborhood Association. And I have been in contact with Mr. Maffrey, the developer, and expressed our concerns about the development. Number one, the density, and number two, the whether or not there's adequate parking that has been proposed for the development. With the number of bedrooms that are being proposed in the 8 units, if those were 1-bedroom apartments, the city would require 75 parking spaces, whereas he's only proposing 16. And we just think that's just too many, the potential for too many people to have too many cars with only 16 parking spaces dedicated or planned for this development. So he is going to meet with us later this week, and we plan to be able to, hope to be able to come to some agreement in terms of our concerns.
Fantastic, Ms. Easterwood. Thank you so much for sharing that. And to the rest of the committee and to staff, I understand that that our process ideally would be we issue the option, all of the details get sorted out, and then we convey the land when all the details are sorted out. But in cases like this, at least to me, it makes sense that we might try to sort out some of these big details before we actually even issue the option, if they are going to be things that ultimately torpedo the option and make it such that we don't even consider it somewhere down the road. Commissioner Johnson?
I just wanted to say aye to that suggestion.
Okay, we will, for the benefit of our committee and for the benefit of the public, we are commencing on a systematic review of our policy and guidelines for the neighborhood and community development, the Wyandotte County Land Bank. And so this certainly is going to be something that we will talk through and get input on as we try to update our guidelines to reflect current best practice. I do see that we have another attendee, and it says Mamie on my screen. And so if that person can go ahead and unmute.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have
And
one
you are
question.
currently unmuted. And if you could, first of all, if you could give us your name and your city of residence, just for the record.
Mamie Springs, Kansas City, Kansas.
Thank you so much. And now you have up to 3 minutes to make comments, but if I heard you correctly, you have a question you'd like to ask.
Yes, I do. I was just wondering, is this development targeting senior citizens, or is it going to target multifamily homes?
And I'll have Mr. Knapp come back and actually answer that to the best of his knowledge. As it's been presented to me, I'll tell you that there's no mention of it targeting seniors, for example, 55 plus. Mr. Knapp, do you have any other information on that?
Yes, I believe since it is 5 bedrooms, they are targeting families with these.
But okay, but they're not necessarily, for example, the YMCA lofts that they're doing right now at 8th and Armstrong, those are 55 plus as a criteria for getting in. You're not aware of any similar age restriction on these, correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
I do think that this is an interesting point that we should go ahead and just follow through with the developer in the time that we have for reviewing the proposal again to find out what the focus of the apartments will be. And so, ma'am, let's see, are you, oh, you're not still on there. So for your benefit, ma'am, we will find out if there are any special requirements envisioned by the developer before we bring this back to committee next month. All right, before we take a vote, I'd ask if there's anyone else who, absolutely, you are welcome. Before we take a vote, I'd ask if there's anyone else who'd like to make a comment about this proposal, recognizing that we will be taking this back for more discussion. A final decision will not be made tonight, and it'll come back to a future neighborhood and community development meeting. I don't see any other hands up among the attendees. Any other comments or questions from commission? I don't see any hands there either. Could we have a roll call, please?
Roll call. Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you, committee. That will be considered additionally and then brought back to us at a future meeting. Mr. Knapp, item number 1B, please.
All right. This is for a multi-purpose community center. It's supposed to be at 500 Freeman Avenue. The zoning is CP1 and it is 1.67 acres. It's going to have offices, meeting space for 150. It's going to have a kitchen and it's going to have community program and like a meeting space. They are requesting a 2-year option for 1 year for fundraising and 1 year for building. They plan to have it built in 2024. There is the next steps are there is a plan review. So this will not be the last meeting for this. There will be another public meeting. Staff and the Land Bank Advisory Board did recommend the project. The Land Bank Advisory Board would like to have a community meeting on the project, but that was only 2 members out of, so that's not an overwhelming vote, but that was a concern that they did bring up, and there will be another public meeting on the project, just not a community meeting. So that is, Commissioner, that sums up this item here.
And so, Mr. Knapp, if I can just clarify my understanding of it, this is a group that would like to build a community center for the benefit of the surrounding community. And one of the ways that they can make this project happen is by using land bank land, and then they will fundraise the rest of the cost of construction and outfitting of it.
That is correct.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. So does the committee have any comments or questions? And I'll recognize Commissioner Johnson.
Again, thank you, Chair. Mr. Knapp, it seems to me that we have conveyed other property on this block for other purposes. I think maybe some homes and or duplexes or townhomes. Is that not correct, or can you verify that one way or the other?
Yes, that is correct. It's actually one block to the south of this. There's supposed to be, I forget the exact number of new homes, but there's supposed to be more, like 3 or 4 new homes.
Gotcha.
Townhomes and the duplexes.
Okay. So they're wanting that whole plot of land, but they're not planning on using, it doesn't look like just by the schematic that they're planning on using all of that land. Is that correct?
It doesn't appear to be. Yeah.
I was made aware of the project, but that is all that I have heard about it. It sounds like a very another compelling project itself. And have they met with the Turtle Hill Neighborhood Association?
To my knowledge, no, they have not.
Well, I tell you what, I like to hold this one over too, for the same reason. I want them to meet with the Turtle Hill Neighborhood Association, and then I'd like to meet with them as well. I was aware of it. I didn't know when it was coming. It actually came a lot sooner than what I was anticipating. So that would be my recommendation.
Commissioner, I usually send out,
Consider that a motion, Commissioner Johnson?
Yes. Go ahead, Judge.
Commissioner, I usually send out the email to the neighborhood groups, but this property is not in the neighborhood boundaries, so they were not notified of it.
That's Chelsea Plaza. That's Chelsea Plaza. Okay, fair enough.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll recognize Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Townsend, second the motion just made by Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you so much.
And one more thing for Mr. Knapp, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Have we to date, to your recollection, approved any of these options for 2 years?
The one just to the south of this location, we approved. Well, they had 1 year, but they didn't get it done in time, and then we did extend it 1 year. So we do have a 2-year option out for that, but we have never done an option for 2 years right out of the gate.
Okay, so the other one was an extension, a renewal, so to speak, but we have not done, to your recollection, a 2-year right off the bat.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would just share with the committee that my concern here is the same as I had with the last project, that we are by option occupying or committing this plot of land for an extended period of time, with a little bit of a question mark on the back end in terms of the ability to actually follow through and complete the project. I will recognize, okay, so we've had now, just for a moment here, committee, we have had someone from the attendees who's been promoted over to panelist. And so before I get to you, and this is S. King, it says on my screen, before I get to you, I'll ask the clerk, did we receive any correspondence about this item?
The clerk's office has not received any correspondence.
Fantastic. Then at this point, I'll ask if there's anyone who is in attendance who'd like to offer comment on this item. And I have an S. King on my screen. And so at this point, that person has been promoted. All you need to do is unmute. I'd ask you to share your name and your city of residence for the record, and then you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments. I see you are unmuted. Feel free to proceed.
Thank you. My name is Sylvia King. I am a resident of Kansas City, Kansas, and I'm the president of Turtle Hill Community Association. Our boundaries reach from 7th Street to 5th Street and Freeman Avenue to Washington Boulevard. If the AKAs are using this address as 530 Freeman Avenue, it is in the Turtle Hill community. The Chelsea Street Plaza, a home and apartments, use Freeman Court and Freeman Drive, I believe. But this facility, the New Omegas, you are using this address as 530 Freeman Avenue. So it is part of Turtle Hill. And we would love to hear from the sorority. It sounds like a great plan, but we would like to sit down and talk with them so they can inform us of what they would want to do. And that's all I wanted to give.
Thank you, Ms. King. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your input on that. And I'll recognize Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. That actually just validates my thoughts there. And so I just wanted to be able to say that for the record. Judd, I would ask that they would meet with Mrs. King and the Turtle Hill Neighborhood Association to just get some clarity and some understanding as to their plans. And again, I do share Commissioner McKiernan's and Commissioner Townsend's concern of holding land for such an extended period of time. Our policy does not speak to that in any form or fashion. That's just a general question to you, Judd.
Does our policy mention options?
It doesn't speak to them in terms of the length of time that an applicant can hold property in order to construct, or whatever the case may be.
I know what was written into the option contract that I was given when I showed up. I am not really clear that if it's in the policy, but I know that there is holding this, you can hold the property. Yes, it is in the policy, but I'm not exactly sure the dates given, but I can definitely get that.
Thank you. I'm sure Commissioner McKiernan probably can speak to that to some degree. So I'll ask him as well if he has any insight on that.
It is codified in that it is in our agreement that we sign with the person who's going to acquire, the person or company who's going to acquire or get the option. In terms of our policy manual, our policy guideline, we do need to go, and that's one of the things we need to do, is to go ahead and work toward identifying a timeline for these option agreements. So here's a case where the option policy simply says, see the agreement. The agreement specifies a timeline, and we need to put it back over in the policy as well.
Right.
At this point, we have a motion and a second to hold this for the period of another month so that we can have additional discussion with the commissioners and with the local neighborhood group. Are there any further comments or questions from the committee? If there are none, roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Townsend.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you, committee. That takes us to item number 1C. Mr. Knapp, proposal for new construction.
Hey, Commissioner. So this is a request for 4 land bank lots that is located at 61st Street, just north of I-70. And this totals 33 acres. They plan to use this for a storage unit facility. It is currently zoned R1, so it would require a zoning change. So an offer was given for, we had a 2016 property appraisal on this property for $330,000. The applicant sent in an offer price for $200,000 for that. Believe there was a memo from Doug in your packet that said that we don't definitely, staff is not recommending selling that property for $200,000. So the next steps would be, it will need a development review committee. It will need another public meetings, planning plan review. It will need a master plan change to change it, and a zoning change to change it from R1. Staff and the Land Bank Advisory Board did not recommend this project, stating that it requires a master plan change. 33 acres is a very large storage facility, and the land is worth more for future development. Commissioner, I believe that sums up my presentation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Knapp. I will ask the committee if there are any comments or questions regarding this project. I will just share with the committee that given the number of moving parts here, I wonder if this should be framed as part of an item that would come to our Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee, because there is certainly a lot more than a simple land transaction that is required for this to come to fruition. So that's the first thought that runs through my mind. I'll recognize Allie Porter from the staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was just going to say that Pete Peterson with the developer is on, and I believe he had just been admitted. I saw him a moment ago.
Oh, I do see him. He has been promoted, and he now has his hand up. So now he's come to the top of my list. And so, Mr. Peterson, you represent the company that wants to acquire this land, and you can give us some additional details, correct? You are still muted. You are back to being muted.
Is that better?
There we go. Perfect.
Okay. Well, I like being promoted. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, my name's Pete Peterson. My address is 748 Ann Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101. I represent Dave Spehar, who I've known for years. I won't regurgitate the history of this whole thing, but you know, this started back in 2016. Dave made an offer for the property. The UG was kind enough to obtain an appraisal. And it's the same company that the bank that Dave's associated with uses quite a bit, Bliss and Associates. And it came in, as Judd said, $330,000. I wrote a letter of in response to that back in December of 2016, and I think it was supposed to be disseminated to all the committee members about some critiques on the appraisal, which we believed were quite serious, in that the appraisal, for instance, said that there were sewers at that area, and of course they're not. They recommended residential. Well, be that as it may, 4 years have gone by, and Dave thought he would take another run at making another offer for this property, and it wouldn't be storage units on the whole 30 acres. I just don't think that's feasible. But the offer is for all 30 acres. And of course, this is all subject to planning and zoning's requirements. This is in its infancy, and maybe we're putting the cart before the horse, but he's very interested in the property. It's a cash offer. There's no incentives, no tax incentives envisioned whatsoever. We'll give you that in writing. I think I even put that in my letter to Catherine Carter back in March when the offer was made. So given all of those factors, I'm a little naive as to perhaps the procedure. I've done a lot of planning and zoning. I've been in front of you many times on various issues, but I just don't want to overstep my bounds or Dave's bounds in any way. He's very interested in the property, but if there's certain things that need to be done, renderings, plans, going in front of planning, just please let us know. But in the meantime, I just don't want to be out of step with the procedure here.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. If you wouldn't mind sticking around in case any of the members of the committee
sure.
have questions for you, that'd be great. But I'll just offer, I wonder, like you, if maybe we've got the cart before the horse, or we just don't have this in the right flow. And again, given the fact that this is not our typical land bank type transaction, but comes wrapped up in much more in terms of negotiating a sale price and all of the planning and zoning requirements and all of the site requirements that are well beyond the scope of what this committee typically entertains. I just wonder if you are correct that we may need to reconsider this potentially through a different avenue, possibly our Economic Development and Finance Committee. I'll ask if other members of the committee have comments or questions about the project as a whole, or specifically for Mr. Peterson.
Well, and may I say something, Brian?
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, if what we would like to do is get our foot in the door, so to speak, and get an indication that if that price, subject to all of the permitting and requirements, are being complied with, will that fly? I think is probably where my client is coming from.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay.
Recognize Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Townsend. Good evening, Mr. Peterson.
Hello, Commissioner.
I like the shoe analogy, but I think maybe a different pair of shoes may be needed. I looked at this the same way Commissioner McKiernan does. I don't think I have enough information to move on this today, just from some of the things that you said. I think if this were presented as part of an economic development package, there would be some other things that we would have access to. For instance, maybe a more recent appraisal. You're looking at something that's 5 years old, and it's unusual to see such a difference between the appraisal that the UG came up with and the offer price and justification for such a wide variance. Those are the kinds of things we normally would see as part of the package in an economic, development situation. So I would like to see it recouched with more information in that, because it is unusual that neither staff nor advisory is recommending the project. So, so that I have, and the other staff members, if they feel the same, as much current information available to them to decide, that I would like to see this recast in an economic development with more updated information. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll recognize Commissioner Walters.
Yes, thank you. When we went to this option process, that was a change to how we used to do it. And the idea is that the potential developer would be able to negotiate an option to buy the property before they invest maybe thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars doing all kinds of legwork without any commitment or guarantee that they would ever be able to control the land. And my understanding in the development world is the first thing you want to do is to be able to control the land. So if you are successful in negotiating all the hurdles that need to be negotiated, at least you're guaranteed that you'll be able to follow through. And if you can't, then that's the risk of the developer. They're out the cost of the option, and that's just a cost of doing business. So I don't want to throw out our option concept and tell potential buyers. And this is maybe a good example because this is a very complicated set of processes that we would have to go through. But I like the idea of awarding the option so that the developer at least has some sort of commitment that they can follow through with the project if they satisfy all the city's requirements. So I don't have a problem with extending the option before all these other approvals are followed and evaluated by all the various committees. But I don't think we should give up on our option concept, which is kind of what I'm hearing in various other conversations earlier in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So you bring up an excellent point, and I need to consider that even myself, that the option agreement still requires that all sorts of steps be completed, including negotiating the sale price for the land, but it does put it under option. And I do appreciate your comment because that is different than I was thinking before, and that's a great thought. I'll recognize Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Burrows, at-large District 2. Mr. Peterson, you said something that caught my attention, and that's that the individual wants to purchase the property is not asking for any incentives or any abatements for the property. Did I hear that correctly?
Unequivocally, Commissioner, none whatsoever.
The next question I would have, Mr. Peterson, was, and you stated that the last appraisal was commissioned in 2016?
2016, yes, sir.
So it's 5 years ago. Would your client be accepting of a reappraisal of the property in today's time frame?
Well, actually, I sort of anticipated someone might ask that question. I don't know. He's been on vacation. I mean, if that's a requirement, sure. And then, I mean, let's get down. Who would pay for it?
Understood. And what I'm trying to do is be fair here to our unit of government as well as your client. The sounds like the first appraisal that was conducted in excess of 300,000 was an inaccurate appraisal. And so I don't know what direction the appraisal will go as far as up or down in reference to the money the value of that property. But if I heard you correctly in your testimony, you stated that the original appraisal had sewers being on the property, and there's no sewers on the property. So that would be an inflated value to the property.
That's absolutely correct. And in my, I don't know, 3 or 4 page letter, some of the other glaring mismarks were, comparables are always used by appraisers. and they were using comparables that were inaccurate also. And I'm not certainly criticizing Bliss. I just hired them to appraise the Schatz building down on South 28th Street. But that somehow they missed the mark on that appraisal back in 2016. And, you know, we'd love to talk about perhaps a more, you know, a recent appraisal. I mean, you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to realize real estate has gone up considerably in the last few years. But I think we are starting at a very inaccurate position and basis with that old appraisal.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Chairman, I have no more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. I'll recognize Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Townsend, District 1. I want to make it clear that I am still very much in favor of our option process. This one just throws me off because I cannot remember another one where we're looking at an appraised value and versus an offer. So it just has tones of what we would normally be considering in the economic development arena more so than the option. I don't know what I would be asked to do here. Are we being asked to approve a request for an option for 1 year, and in so doing also agree with the offer price? That's why it's not clear to me, but I'm 100% with our option process as we move along to refine it. So that's my concern with this. And I think a more recent appraisal needs to be had by somebody so that each of us can say to our constituents that we just didn't give away land for way below what we're looking at here, just to be fair to all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I've got 3 hands up here, and I'm going to go a little bit out of order depending on how they were raised. I'm going to circle back to Commissioner Walters at this point, just so that you can clarify your comment.
Yeah, well, I wanted to comment based on Gail's comments. I'm most familiar with options that do lock in a specific price. So I guess I'd ask Mr. Peterson if that would be his understanding, that entering into an option would only happen after you agreed to a purchase price, or do you think have you ever had an option that is executed without a definite purchase price included?
In all honesty, Jim, no. You know, they've all, you have a definite strike price about what the option is and the length of the option. You know, and in fairness to everyone, now that I'm seeing that the procedure is a little more clear, is it my understanding that this committee meets once a month?
That is correct.
Perhaps I could go back to my client, and this is just a thought. I know there's other hands up and that might clear the way, but I was thinking, you know, it sounds pretty clear that a new appraisal is perhaps needed. It's also clear that if we're successful, then the property would be tied up under an option. He made it quite clear to me that his offer is $200,000 for the property, subject to, you know, obtaining all the requisite permitting. If it would be permitted to put this over for 1 month, I think we could have a lot more clear and direct proposal in front of you in July, if that would help at all.
Thank you. I think this technically does count as our July meeting. So the next meeting would be at the very beginning of August, 5 weeks instead of 4 weeks from now.
Okay. Well, that's better yet. I've got another one on that too, I think. But no, that would be fine.
Okay. All right. I'm going to recognize Wendy Green from our legal department, who I think wanted to clarify the sales price and option fact.
Correct. Thank you, Commissioner. I was going to clarify that, yes, most of our option agreements would definitely have a sales price within it when it was agreed upon, so everybody would know what we were getting into and what they would know what financing they have to prove that they actually have, or if they actually have the funds to do this, because we do require that as part of the option agreement process. But I also wanted to state, secondly, that I believe this is actually the correct committee for this to be in. I know we would like more information that comes in front of economic development, but this is land bank, it's not UG. So because it's land bank, I think it should stay within this committee. I think we could definitely ask for more information to be brought back for the next standing committee meeting. But I think it should remain in this one.
Oh,
Thank you, Ms.
Wendy.
Green.
Yes.
That is exactly why we have smart folks like you to help us out with these transactions. At this point, I'll recognize Jane Philbrook, who is the commissioner for the district in which this land is located. You are muted, Commissioner. Ooh, we have a microphone problem. The screen, my screen shows you are unmuted, but we're having difficulty hearing you, or at least I am. Ah, the wonders of technology.
Well, I had sent you an email, Brian. I had trouble getting on tonight, so.
Oh, interesting. I myself, I'm at City Hall right now, so I had some trouble getting on as well. As opposed to, I think if I could barely hear Commissioner Philbrook, and I think she said, answer the phone, and I'm not sure if I can just be a relay back and forth. Wendy, is that okay?
Yeah, she's not a committee member. She's just actually at this point, since she's not on this standing committee, she's really just a member of the public. I don't have a problem with that.
All right, fair enough. And Commissioner Philbrook, go ahead. Commissioner, I'm going to stop you for just a second, and I'm going to ask the other members of the committee. Now, I'm hearing her because I have her on my phone. Can you hear anything she's saying? No. Okay. Because I'm using an earbud rather than the speaker on the microphone on my computer. Thank you so much. I'll alert Mariah that Commissioner Philbrook will be, or the clerk's office, either one. She's going to try to call the Zoom number rather than my phone and get in through the telephone into the Zoom meeting directly. Commissioner Philbrook, even though we can't hear you, you need to mute the microphone on your computer. I think that's where the feedback loop is. For our staff, I see that Commissioner Philbrook is now in the attendees list. I assume we can promote her over. Hello? Okay. Thank you so much. I will pass that along. For the benefit of everyone who is here in the meeting, Commissioner Philbrook said that she agrees with the direction that this conversation has gone, that she would like to hold this over for another month so that we can clarify things like sales price before the option gets executed. So with that, I would ask the members of the committee if there is a motion for this item.
Walters, I move that we hold this item over till the next regularly scheduled meeting of this committee.
Townsend, second.
There's been a motion and a second to hold over for the purpose of obtaining additional information that would inform the option agreement. I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Roll call. Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
Burrows,
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye. Thank you, committee. I appreciate that. That is the last item on the Neighborhood and Community Development agenda. So we will adjourn that committee, and I'll turn the floor over to Commissioner Burrows for Economic Development and Finance.
Can I thank everyone?
Absolutely, you may.
Thank you.
Thank you for thinking.
I'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner McKiernan. Before I get started, I would just like to advise everyone, this is Commissioner Burrows at-large District 2, that I'm operating from my phone with no picture because my phone is low on power. My power's been out at my home for over an hour and a half now. And so I have no internet connectivity except through my phone, and I'm trying to conserve as much power as I can. So, but I do want to continue to move forward this evening. So before I call the meeting to order, I want to announce that due to COVID-19, the committee members, staff, and public are attending remotely via Zoom or by phone. All participants joining by phone should mute their phones when not speaking to avoid background noise. During the meeting, please make sure that you announce yourself by name and title every time you speak so the public that is observing knows who is speaking. This is critical given the number of remote participants and is current guidance from the Kansas Attorney General. And due to COVID-19 requirements, in-person public comment has been suspended unless otherwise required by law. The public has been allowed to submit comments by mail prior to the meeting, and those comments will be included in the record of this meeting. With that, I will now call the meeting of the Economic Development and Finance Standing Committee to order. And I would like to welcome everyone to this meeting, and I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Roll call. Bryant,
Here.
Walters,
Here.
Burrows.
Here. Thank you, committee. And I would like to recognize that Jeff Bryant, BPU board member, is with us this evening as a member of the committee. And with that, the first thing on the agenda are, I believe, the revisions, but I don't believe there's any revisions to tonight's agenda. I would ask the clerk if that is correct.
That is correct.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the standing committee minutes from the month of March and March 29th and May 3rd, 2021.
Johnson move for approval.
Walters, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from March 29th and March 3rd. I would ask that the clerk please call roll and we'll dispense of the minutes appropriately.
Roll call: Bryant,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye. Thank you, committee. That takes us to our only item on the agenda this evening, and that is it's a resolution. It will require some action. It's the Fourth Amendment to the KC Foodie Park Development Agreement. This is a resolution adopting the Fourth Amendment to the KC Foodie Park Development Agreement to extend various deadlines by 6 months. And it has been submitted by Stephanie Moore, but I do understand tonight that Allie Porter will be making the presentation. And with that, I would welcome Allie Porter.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Allie Porter, Commission Liaison. Tonight for this item, I'm actually going to introduce Todd LaSala, our outside legal counsel for this project, if we could please admit him. And we also have our developer on as well, Mr. Scavuzzo and Mr. Kurt Peterson, if they could be admitted too.
Okay, Commissioners, this is Todd LaSala, your outside counsel at Stinson. With your permission, I'd like to start with a very quick overview about the Scavuzzo's project. I know many of you remember it very well. You'll recall that it has 4 distinct components. We talk about them in phases and project areas, and we'll get into deadlines about each of these 4 phases. You'll remember the first phase is the food service center. It's about a 266,000, very unique food service distribution facility. The second phase is primarily about retail and 3 retail pad sites. The fourth phase is some additional commercial offerings. I'm sorry, the third phase is additional commercial offerings. And then the fourth phase is really about a headquarters building. And what you have before you tonight is a Fourth Amendment that proposes to extend some deadlines for phases 2, 3, and 4. Each of those deadlines would be extended, and there are 2 kinds of deadlines. Deadlines about the deadline to submit a TIF project plan for those project areas, and deadlines, I believe, about commencement. But these deadlines, each of them would be extended by about 6 months. And you have to forgive me, Commissioners, there is a mistake in section 2A, Romanet 3, the deadline to submit a project plan for project area 4. It should read January 15th, 2025 and not 2024. It should be an extension by 6 months and not an acceleration. So that's just a typo, and that's my mistake. And so I'm sorry about that. There are also changes to the completion date for the phase 2 retail improvements. That date was originally tied to the closing of the phase 1 property. The developer's request would push that date and tie it to the phase 2 closing, the date they close on that land. And that date would ultimately be 24 months from the closing of the property. Tonight's Fourth Amendment comes to you with a recommendation of no action from the staff. And the reason for that is, quite honestly, the developer has missed the deadline for phase 1, commencing construction of phase 1 of the project. That deadline had been extended. The date was April 30th. And to date, the developer has still not commenced. So sitting here right now, we're about 60 days overdue. I will tell you that we, the staff, have been in constant communication with the developer and his team about this commencement. We have believed over the course of that 60 days that commencement of construction was imminent, but it's just not happened. So I know that they're anxious tonight to come before you and explain why that's occurred that way. But given that they haven't started yet on phase one, the staff is not recommending that you take action on these extensions for phases 2, 3, and 4. Rather, you take this up again at your August meeting and see if they've commenced it at that time. So, commissioners, that's really what I have for you. I know the developer is anxious to present to you and talk about why we're here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions along the way.
Committee, any questions? Of Mr. LaSala? Mr. LaSala, just for clarification, right at the very end, you summed it up about extending the timeframes for 2 through, I believe it was 4.
That's right.
What about the first phase that we're in violation, the breach of contract in reference to the expiration in April? Could you please clarify that for those that are listening?
Sure thing. Commissioner, there are, in the amendment that was in your packet, there are no amendments proposed for phase 1. And the reason for that is that the EDNF deadline is relatively early. At the time we put this on the agenda, we still believed that commencement was imminent. And frankly, we, the staff, had hoped that by the time we got to tonight, there would have been some commencement of construction activity out there on the site. So at that point, they had not requested any amendments relative to phase 1 at all. In further communication since that time, I think the developer does have some ideas about proposing changes to the commencement dates and maybe asking you for some extensions there. We have talked about that. I saw a document from them today that has some ideas about that, but I'd love to give them the opportunity to explain what they have in mind.
Thank you, Mr. LaSala. Committee, any other questions? And I apologize, committee. It's really, I'm operating here in the blind a little bit. I see no hands raised from the committee. So having no questions, I assume that Mr. Scavuzzo will be speaking next.
I believe that's correct. Richard, you on?
Welcome.
I'm on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Welcome to committee.
All right. I can't see anyone, so I'm just talking to a blank screen here. So thank you, everybody, for the time tonight. I'd like to start with a little bit of a breakdown of progress that we've made on the full development, starting with phase 2, 3, and 4, and then circle back to phase 1, the distribution center. Over the last year, we have a team of 3, including myself, that have been working every day on the phase 2, 3, and 4, finding users, finding retail opportunities that are excited about the site and that want to go in and spend their money developing solutions for those sites. We've had very good discussions and a lot of people in line with those phases. Along with those phases, we've been working with Greg Kendall and the EDC on a phase 5, which would be an early childhood development center that would be across 47th on the west side. And we continue to expand the what we want the whole site to look like, and expand some of the community things for the community on that for the project. As far as phase 1, we have obviously had some delays. If you look at some of the timeline associated with our delays, Our first delay came right at the beginning of COVID, when we were thinking, let's lock down for 2 weeks and get ahead of the COVID outbreak. Then a couple of months later, we're back in front of the committee asking for another extension, with that being obviously a longer process than anyone anticipated. And then again in September for the third extension that got us to the April 30th deadline. We had over the last 9 months, let me back up. A year ago, when we were asking for those extensions, we were engaged with 4 financing partners that were going to come alongside Scabuzzo's food service and build this phase 1 with us. We were dedicated to a Kansas City-based partner, and so we engaged solely with that Kansas City-based firm, because we want to keep this thing as local as we can. So for the last 9 months, we've only negotiated and got to the end of April, where we were pulling permits to break ground. At the last moment, their project, our project, was tied with approximately 6 other projects, which obviously grew from a single project. And their funding source was not going to be able to fund and hit the timeline for our development agreement, which forced our hand in delaying the start on the last day of April, right around the last day of April, 28th, 29th. So with that delay, or with that situation, we had to regroup on the financing piece. We had to walk away from that financing partner, or we would have been way outside of our development agreement. So we have since re-engaged with the three partners that we walked away from to negotiate directly with this Kansas City-based firm, and feel very, very confident that it will go through and we'll have a successful project. One of the questions I believe that I can answer right away is, what guarantees do we have besides me just saying that the project will go through? And I think instead of me just saying it, we're showing it. We to date have spent well over $1 million on the project. We continue to not only have a team of 3 on the phase 2, 3, and 4 on that development, including certain personnel that have been involved with the Lenexa City Center project. But we also have a team of 3, including myself, that are working on the financing side, as well as Primus Builders, ViaStore on the automation, and the Pulsanelli team that are all involved in this project and have been since we started. And even with COVID, we were working on it every day. So we have a large investment in the facility already, in the project already. And what we're proposing tonight is that we start on the groundwork for phase 1, which will be another $300,000 to $500,000 investment from Scabuzzo's as a interim solution. So we would start on commencement of that groundwork within 10 days of the full EDNF meeting on the 8th of next month, I believe. So we would start construction groundwork within 10 days, and then continue that groundwork until complete. And then there would be a slight pause up to December 31st for phase one. And then once we start construction on the rest of the building, we would do it continuously until it was complete. So with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Scavuzzo. Committee questions? I see no hands. Mr. Scavuzzo, if I may, you said December 31st, you would commence construction throughout. You would commence construction and then continue on for the phase one on December 31st. If I remember correctly, I think it was a second extension. We were concerned about construction during the winter months.
Commissioner, we do have a hand raised.
Okay, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Burrows, you can go ahead and finish your line of questions first.
Thank you, and I apologize. I'm operating from my phone here, just trying to multitask on this thing. Again, Mr. Scavuzzo, the question that I had was in one of your extensions that we granted in the past, we gave the last extension that went to the end of April. That extension included the winter months for construction, and yet you give us a day of December 31st of 2021. Moving forward and commencing construction. Do you see the winter month impacting the construction deadline at that time?
It is a possibility, although I think most of the winter months delays are due to groundwork, and we hope to be done with the groundwork before the ground would freeze.
Great, thank you for that. Mr. Bryant, thank you for your patience.
Mr. Scavuzzo, Jeff Bryant, BPU board. So, you know, this project is gone pretty far out. I know from the beginning there were some, you know, at least I had some concerns with it. It was a lofty target to obtain, but let's kind of look at the timeline now for project phase one. So if you're not going to do ground break until 10 days after the August meeting, so you're talking nearly the end of summer before you even do groundbreaking, do the base groundwork, say a 3-month project, and then take a break before beginning it in the beginning of 2022. When do you suppose that first project would even be completed?
My understanding is the next EDNF is July 8th, not the August meeting. I'm not positive on that, but so we would be talking about the initial groundwork commencing in a few weeks.
Mr. Scavuzzo, really fast, just so people don't get confused, and I apologize. Mr. Chairman, Kurt Peterson with the Polson firm representing Scavuzzo's. What Mr. Scavuzzo is referring to is if this committee were to consider this adjustment to the amendment that's before you in the ways he's described, which we can repeat if necessary, we would ask that this would be referred out to the July 8th full commission meeting, and that the work he described as what would be the initial site work, specifically being the silt fencing is what I'm trying to say, erosion control, and the demolition of all the hardscape that's there now. 10 business days from July 8th would be a July 22nd commencement. So sorry for the interruption. I just wanted to go ahead and clarify that.
Well, you know, then let me continue my train of thought. So I don't understand what the requirement of having this adjustment to phase 2, 3, and 4 has to do with the initiation of phase 1. I believe that we've given 2 additional extensions already on phase 1. So I'm not understanding why you're having to have this approval before you can move forward with even beginning the phase one, which should have began a few months ago.
As legal counsel, I might jump in, Rich, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
The idea of spending another $300,000 to $500,000 on this 6 to 8 weeks of demolition work that Mr. Scavuzzo described in a situation where the committee or ultimately the full commission could assert the position that there was a failure to abide by the obligations of the development agreement would put that, up to $500,000 at risk. So the request would be, can we go ahead and adjust the deadlines now before Mr. Scavuzzo and his family company would sign off on this additional contract for all the demolition? It's just making sure we're on the same page, sir, before spending a lot of money.
Mr. Bryant, any other questions?
Well, Mr. LaSalle,
Comment?
so how much has the UG invested in this project so far?
Well, honestly, not very much. We had a funding agreement where the UG's costs for engaging were pretty minimal, right? So the UG got reimbursed for its third-party costs for all the legal work and the administrative exercise of going forward and putting this thing together. We've been reimbursed in full for all of that work. And we did go have a land closing for phase one in, I think, March of last year. So we are not out of pocket any money to speak of. We've invested a lot of time and energy and effort, but are we out of pocket any cash? No, not really. And Commissioner, if I may, I'd like to clarify a couple of things. Mr. Peterson did send me a document today that sort of articulated this new request that you could consider tonight for phase one. You're going to hear about it orally. It's the kind of thing where if you wanted to go this direction, we could easily incorporate it into an amendment and either go straight to commission or come back in August to ED&F. Kurt, I'm being told via text that we do not have a July 8th meeting. I think the earliest this could come forward to full commission, if this committee wanted to do that, would be July 29th. But I want to be really clear about what their proposal is. They're saying for phase one, phase one today is an April 30th commencement of construction. You start that day and you just go forward continuously. They're really saying, let's modify that a little bit. Let's have two phases of what commencement means. Phase one would be after they get to approval, whenever that would be at commission, they'll start the erosion control and demolition work 10 days after that, whenever that approval would come. And then by December 31st of 2021, they would commence site work and continuously go after that until completed. They are also proposing, Kurt or Rich, correct me if this is wrong, but the document I got today also suggested that the completion date would move a little bit. The current completion date, based on our third amendment, is April 30th, 2023. And their proposal would move that out a couple of months to July 1st of 2023. So that, if I understand right, that's what the proposal would be.
And the only sentence, Todd, I would add on that is that the construction schedule that you have and Mr. Bach has had for a little while, that's the latest from our contractor Primus, actually has us still finishing on time, meaning that April date that's in the development agreement now. But out of an abundance of caution, Mr. Scavuzzo and I went ahead and moved that several months to July 1st, just to reflect the reality of anything can happen in the wet fall or in the winter, as the chairman was saying. And so our schedule is still showing us a good spring finish that year, but we, again, put a little bit of buffer on there to that July 1st date that you have in front of you.
And to add in supply chain of construction materials to that.
Well, gentlemen, I believe you've made your case to the committee in reference to the extended timeline. I would ask this committee if there's any other questions. If we have none, I would ask the clerk if there was any public comment or concerns or questions that were sent in for this issue.
The clerk's office has received no communication.
Thank you. Committee, I do see Commissioner Townsend's hand has been raised. So Commissioner Townsend, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Scavuzzo. Just a couple points of clarification. If we don't take any action with this resolution tonight, are you saying that you're not going forward with the phase one? I understand that the documents in effect now, we've already passed the April 30th date. So what are we saying here? Because when I looked at this resolution, maybe I overlooked it, but I didn't really see anything that talked about phase one. So did that come later? I didn't think we had any amendments.
And Kurt, can you go ahead and take that as far as the timing and how that all transpired?
Sure, this is Kurt Peterson, and I'm going to refer a little bit, Commissioner, just to tie things together to something Mr. LaSala said. It was in brief, so I would understand that it needs to be repeated. But Mr. LaSala is right that because we lost our partner, we literally pulled permit before the deadline to commence, and it plus or minus a day or two here, you know, the 28th, 29th of April. And literally within 24 hours, Rich, that was when our 9-month adventure, you know, legal documentation, everything fell through with our equity partner. So at that point, we, as Mr. LaSalle, you may have remembered him making a reference to constant communication with the developer team. That's always been the case. So we immediately reached out and explained the situation. Frankly, we were trying to figure out at that moment, because we take the development agreement deadline so seriously, exactly what to do. We did pull permit on time, and we were trying to figure out whether it made the most sense to mobilize and go with the work that we're talking about now, doing with all the demolition work and erosion control, et cetera. And ultimately went back and forth with staff and ultimately made the decision as we got closer and closer to committee that we better just wait and take this before committee, because in theory, and we hope this is never the case, but if we're held to be having passed the deadline and not fulfilled the obligation, we would hate to have spent another, you know, up to $500,000 on demolition only to be told that the UG is not interested in this developer anymore. So hopefully that helps you piece together the timeline. And again, Mr. LaSala, from your perspective, you are on the other end of those communications. If you do have anything to add, it probably, I mean, it's up to the commissioner, but probably be a good time.
I will add in one piece, Kurt. The first part of April, if you guys all remember, we were still planning on breaking ground and doing the groundwork. It rained for about 21 days straight at the beginning of April. So that played a part in the timing of everything and helping us make that decision to go back to EDNF instead of just doing what we were planning on doing.
In fact, I think it was early April, Rich, when we reached out about starting to talk about when the silver shovel sort of ceremonial groundbreaking should be. I mean, it just, everything changed when we got to the end of April.
Right.
Well, I look forward to seeing the development move forward. I'm still baffled by what you're asking us to do here in terms of phase one. I understand we're past those dates, but I guess if the UG has not said you're in default, I'm just thinking for myself, we're looking for execution and moving on. And then speaking only for myself, then I'd be in a better position to evaluate any subsequent requests for, you know, the other phases. So I'm remaining optimistic, but I'm still not sure how approving these extensions for the other phases addresses just moving forward with phase one. So
Yeah, Commissioner, I agree with you. We would not recommend that you just approve these extensions for the subsequent phases. I think we much prefer, and in fact, that's why our recommendation is let's take no action on those and figure out phase one. So I would suggest to you that if you are interested in the developer's proposal as it's been articulated tonight to set these new commencement milestones and adjust the completion date, if you're willing to do all of that in phase one, I would suggest we put all of that into a document and bring it back to you together with these other extensions in a package, and either take that directly to commission to be voted on by the commission, or bring it back to EDNF that first week in August and evaluate it then. But I agree with you. We would not suggest that you just extend the phase 2, 3, and 4 dates and not deal with phase one. We really should deal with phase one way or another.
Right. Thank you for those recommendations. And you know me, I like to see things in writing. It's not that I'd be averse to it, but that's just not what's before me that I see right now. So, Mr. Scavuzzo, I'm still optimistic, but lawyer that I am, I'm looking at what I was presented with and what I don't have, and where we go from here on phase one. Thank you.
Commissioner McKiernan, you had your hand up earlier. I wanted to ensure that you still had an opportunity to speak should you have any questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrows. I am still trying to communicate with Commissioner Philbrook, who had some questions about this. And we've both been trying to listen to all of the comments that have gone on. So we really haven't been. And so if you can just give me a couple of minutes, and this conversation can absolutely carry on, but I'm just trying to make sure that all of Commissioner Philbrook's questions have been answered, since she is the commissioner for the district in which this would be.
Understood. If I may, Kurt, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Scavuzzo, I do know that the initial extension, or the third extension that expired at the end of April, there has not been a letter from the local unit of government as far as I know, in reference to being in a breach of contractual agreement. However, we are asking the public to trust that this development will move forward. And we talked about holding options on land and not moving forward and putting things off for a while. But I would say in your particular case, this has been quite an exceptional 18 months in reference to the challenges anyone would have building a project. But I will state that there are projects in Wyandotte County that were built and continue to move forward even under the most trying of times, whether it be the pandemic or whether it be the lack of materials or the challenge to even find workers to do so. And I am aware that the financial partners have changed since the very beginning of the project inception. But these are all unique situations. I believe that the community and the commissioner that represents that area, as well as myself and others, would like to see a development occur within the Indian Springs area. And your development was one that the community supported. So I would hope that we are able to reach some form of agreement. Taking no actions on 2 through 4, I think, is the most prudent thing to do, allowing you to get back before either the entire commission and or staff to work out the details of phase 1, the start and stop dates. My concern as a commissioner, seeing the time and energy that's been put in by the local unit of government, is that there wasn't a letter sent in reference to breach. So I believe that will help you moving forward. And 2, that you give strong consideration that the resources that the unified government has put forward in approving your project, working with the project, and the challenges that the project has presented us, I would hope that that sends a strong message of how supportive we are of the project. However, that doesn't mean that we can continue to hold this out into perpetuity. Hello?
This is Kurt Peterson. That message was understood.
Thank you. Committee? Commissioner McKiernan, did Commissioner Philbrook have any comments, questions, or concerns?
I will say, Commissioner Burrows, I apologize that I've been bouncing back and forth here. I was trying to listen to two conversations at the same time. And if I understand Commissioner Philbrook's question, it would be that if we were to take no action now, would we push this project toward default by delaying action for, let's say, until the August 8th EDF meeting?
That's a good question. I would ask legal to respond to that. I believe they all are already in default, but a letter hasn't been issued. I don't think the prudent thing to do at this time would to issue a default letter, because it may actually hamper the project moving forward, any financials in which the developer is using to develop the project. But I'll ask staff to respond to that.
Sure, Commissioner, that's all exactly right. Very well said. I will tell you, the county administrator and I have talked about default and whether or not to issue a letter. We have believed that our direction from the commission was to try to make this project happen. So we have not done that. You're right, they are technically in default right now. However, our development agreement provides, all of your development agreements are written like this, it provides a 60-day cure period. So if for some reason this committee felt differently and wanted to go down the road of default, it doesn't sound like we are, but just so you understand, if we were to send them a letter that says you're in default, they get a 60-day opportunity, a window to cure before we start having rights and remedies under our agreement. So you're absolutely correct. We have not sent that default letter to date. And you're also absolutely correct that to do so would have implications on the deal. It might, I think Mr. Scavuzzo, Mr. Peterson would tell you, if we were to do that today, it would make their job harder. Actually, if we're still trying to make this project happen, that will make their job harder. So, Commissioner, everything you said is spot on default.
Great, thank you. So by taking no action this evening on 2 or 4, I guess the question I would have, can we divide this? I'm looking for some guidance. Can we divide this question into 2 parts, making a motion to either take no action on items 2 through 4, or should we try to combine it collectively? I'm afraid we may lose one if we combine them, where we may be understanding and be able to move item 1 forward for full commission review. Just looking for some guidance.
Commissioner, this is Todd LaSala again. My recommendation to you would be that we package all of this together in an omnibus way and get direction from this committee about whether you're open to the suggestion the developer has made about phase 1 and whether you're open to the proposed amendments to phases 2, 3, and 4. If you are, I would recommend you have me reduce all of that to writing in one amendment, and then have the committee decide whether they want to see it again in August or whether you feel comfortable with this going directly to commission on July 29th.
Thank you. In light of the much discussion in reference to the change in contract, I for one would believe it's the prudent thing to do is have the committee review the contract again and not submit it to full commission until we have a chance to review the amended proposals. So committee, this is an item that needs some action, and I would entertain a motion either way to either hold until sometime the developer commences construction on phase 1. That is the staff recommendation. And just for clarity, if we staff, if we take action this evening to ask that you continue to work towards finding the timeline to commence with phase 1, that it will not include phase 2 and 4 extension, but only phase 1. And I do see that Commissioner McKiernan has his hand up. Commissioner?
Thank you, Commissioner Burrows. I would just say that I think that I would lean toward Mr. LaSala's recommendation about packaging this all up and bringing it back for our consideration at the August 8 Standing Committee meeting, provided that doing so does not automatically push the project toward default. I've liked this project from the beginning. There are lesser projects that could go on this land that would not have the community benefit that this project has been designed to provide for the surrounding community. So, like everyone else, I'm concerned that we have met delay after delay. I think like everybody else, I recognize that it's been an extraordinary 18 months over the past year and a half. And the one thing that leads me towards saying, let's find a way to make this work, is the fact that the property owner, the company themselves have invested so much of their capital in this project. It's that they have been putting their own resources into making this project work, not depending on resources from other sources. And so that does give me at least an indication that makes me believe that they are committed to finding a way to make this project work. And I think at this point that I think our best course of action would be to accept Mr. LaSala's recommendation that we write everything that we've talked about tonight up, bring it for consideration on August 8, and that would put it before the full commission. I think we could even fast track that potentially from our August 8 meeting, although I don't have my calendar in front of me to show August full commission.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay. So we do have a motion and a second to fast track. Before we acknowledge the motion, Representative Townsend, Commissioner Townsend, I apologize, had her hand up. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. It was only to second Commissioner McKiernan's motion. Thank you.
Mr. LaSala, are you clear on the motion?
I am clear on the motion.
Okay. I believe the message has been sent that the motion clearly states that this will need to come before the commission, before it goes to full commission. It comes back to the subcommittee for our review so that we can continue to ensure that the timelines are being met and that the contract meets what has been discussed here this evening.
Got it.
Okay. Commissioner Townsend, did you have another question?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from committee?
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, please.
Good. I'm flipping. I guess one thing for us to ask, and I think this would be a question for Mr. Waters, would be our next committee meeting is on August 9th, Monday the 9th. We have a commission meeting on Thursday of that week, the 12th, and then we have another full commission meeting 2 weeks later on August 26th. And so I guess to bring it back on August 9, but I guess for Mr. Waters, if we were so inclined, we include this item on the August 12th full commission?
Yes, at that time,
Or would it have to wait until the end of the month? Okay, so it's potential that we could see this at full commission, provided that everything goes well on August 9. It's potential that we could see it for full commission on August 12.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I had.
Thank you. And just for those that are listening, that means we would fast track after it comes to the subcommittee to the full commission within a handful of days. So any public debate or public discussion would have to occur at the budget or at the subcommittee meeting prior to it going to full commission. Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Do you need to restate the motion?
I think so, Commissioner. We've got it.
Okay. All right. And this will not go on. Will this go on the consent calendar?
Yeah, Commissioner, we're coming back to EDNF in August. The motion is to package this up and bring this back to your committee in August. So, and if it went from there, I guess it'd be fast tracked. I don't think it would be on consent, but Patrick would have to articulate that.
I just want to ensure that we have another bite at the apple on it. And I believe we do by it coming back to the committee. I just don't want to see it go to the full commission and then move forward and come back. And it should come back by the motion.
That's right. That's right. The motion will bring it back to your committee in August.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. I'd ask the clerk, please call roll.
Roll call. Bryant,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Townsend,
Aye.
McKiernan,
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye. Thank you, committee. Thank you, Mr. Scavuzzo, Mr. Peterson, Mr. LaSala, those that joined us this evening. That is the only item we had on our Economic Development Committee this evening. With that,